Okay, good evening. This is definitely the funkiest place I've spoken in for a long, long time. And I'm usually in big, boring conference halls, which it's not the most relaxing place. And I like the title as well, Filming Without Fear, because I worked in television news, and usually you did bring fear to people's lives when you turned up, because quite often they had done something bad and would turn up and but relaxation, it's an interesting thing. You know, how do you get people to relax? And one of the things is, if you tell them to relax, totally the opposite impact. So, what is it that makes people relax in front of camera? Usually, it's expertise and passion about a subject. And passion about a subject is something that is really important for any content that you're putting up, whether it's on the web or television. And you watch people, and when they're talking about what they really care about, it really draws you in. The thing I do is, or one of the things I do is media training, and it's really focusing on this area in terms of how do you, it's usually for television, but it's the same rules whether it's for web content or whatever, is how do you prepare for this? And so I managed to get my course down to 3 words. It's a very expensive course if you think it's only for 3 words, but the first key word is preparation. And if you're filming somebody or you're putting content onto a website, make sure that your people are properly prepared and that they know what they're going to do, because they can't talk for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. They have to sum things up, and any content, I think, that's over a minute and a half, couple of minutes, if it's a story, it's boring. And so you get people, because if you're on television news, for example, you will have usually 15 seconds. That's what a soundbite is, 15 seconds. That's about 45 words. And there's a reason why most news stories on national news, regional news, 1.5 minutes. And in that they will have 2 or 3 different points of view, and usually a reporter standing up and doing a piece to camera. That piece to camera will usually be about 15 seconds as well, because that's a good attention span. It's 50 words, and that's what you should be aiming for. So when you're talking to clients or you're working for people and you're saying to them, right, we want to get your content up there, try and get them to sum up. Can you sum up in 1 sentence what you're saying, and then give them another sentence just to kind of explain and add a wee bit of colour to that. If you're filming people and you're putting them onto the web, get them to practice it. You know, because if people are uncomfortable about having a camera in their faces, they are going to kind of clam up a bit. Just get them to say, right, okay, what are we going to talk about, and talk them through it, have a chat, and that means that if there's something that's complicated to explain, that they work out in their own heads how they do it, help them. And very often what I say to people is, if you're going to go to explain a complicated subject to somebody, try and work out, how would you tell your mother? Or as I read recently, Einstein said, unless you can explain something to a 6-year-old child, you haven't understood it properly yourselves. Because simplicity is all. And whenever I go and explain this to very clever people who are leading captains of industry or professors in universities, and they say, oh my goodness, you're going to ask me to dumb down. And what I do is I say to them, what about the Economist magazine? Do you read the Economist magazine? And most clever people will say, oh yes, of course I do. And I say, good, because in my view, that is probably the best news and current affairs magazine in the English-speaking world. And the Economist produces a style guide, which has lots of very interesting advice on how to write English. And one of their best pieces of advice, I think, is that if you're going to have a big word and a small word that mean the same thing, always use the small word. And the reason for that is quite simple. People understand you. Because once you left school, college or university, you've stopped writing to impress people. You're now trying to convey ideas.
It's hard to reverse that mindset though, because in university you're told the bigger the word the better.
Absolutely.
So it's quite hard to actually reverse what,
Yeah.
you know.
And my daughter has had exactly that experience.
It's challenging to do that, because your brain automatically goes into the more elaborate the word
and the longer the sentence. And you've actually lost the will to live by the time you get to the end of it, you know? Yeah.
Yes, and the more academic you are, the more you will waffle on and come out with big words because you've been kind of conditioned to think
You're
that
programmed into
that's
that.
going to give you a better mark, because it actually does.
Yeah.
And that's why your brain does that automatically.
I had this experience, two things. My daughter in university, and the fact that she listened to me in the first place was remarkable. But she was asking me, can you help me with an essay? And I was saying, Mary, you know, this sentence is far too long, this paragraph is far too long, and I kind of helped her sum things up. And then she goes, oh my God, that's only 700 words, I have to write 1,000 words. So anyway, but she came back and she got marked down because they just said your language is too simple, the construction of your argument is too simple, which I thought was interesting. But that is why I'm saying, when you leave university, you are no longer trying to write to impress people.
But apparently the most effective web content has got the mental reading age of a 9 to 11-year-old.
Yes.
I read an article on that, which I was shocked, because if you produced an article at uni that had the mental reading age of a 9 to 11-year-old, you're probably not going to get a 8 mark. But
No.
online, apparently the best response they get, that's the mental reading
Yep.
age of the article.
Think of Einstein, though. You know, that's what he said. If you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you haven't understood it yourself. And I remember another quite interesting story from a guy I know who was he was a minister in a church, and every church has a leading intellectual. And this guy was from up north, and he came out to church, and they'd had this leading intellectual preaching to them, Professor such and such. And he came out, and these two crofters are talking to each other in Gaelic, and they're saying, you know, I don't think that guy, one of them was saying, I don't think that guy is as clever as they make out, you know. And the other guy says, how do you mean? And he said, you know what, I understood everything he said. Well, he had taken the celestial to the crofter, and that's
what you want. It's very
of course,
hard to understand, but
absolutely. So where was I? Prepare, practice, get your thing, and then perform. And everything you do, whether you're going for a job interview, or you're presenting an idea to somebody, or selling, pitching an idea to a new client or whatever, you are performing. And try and get that performance into people. That is where people lose the wooden thing. Just get them interested in something that they're passionate about. And the key thing for people on television or standing on a stage or whatever is body language. Now, if somebody's standing in front of you, whether it's a university lecturer or whatever, and they are making, or a politician or anybody really, and they make a speech and you're listening to them and they come out with a fact that you know that's just not true, their credibility starts going. But if we're assuming that your message is worked out 100%, you know what you're saying, your facts are right, and you're talking to this audience, then you're in front of the camera. How much do you reckon the audience gets from your words? How much do they get from the voice tone? And how much they get from the body language? All adds up to 100%. So words, voice tone, body language. And this is not my analysis. There's a lot of research on this, and you can Google it. And generally speaking, most of the academics come to the same sort of conclusion. And you'll be utterly stunned by this, that words are 7%, voice tone is 38%, and body language is 55%. So another way of summing that up is that most of what we hear is what we see. So the key thing is that when you're putting people on camera and you're trying to get them to tell a story, which is another thing that they should be doing, is get them, the body language is critically important. And so, you know, if somebody is doing something about music and you get them in a pinstripe suit and a collar and tie and something, it just doesn't work. It's not going to work with the audience. It's, you know, they're going to look stiff, buttoned up, and just not going to get their message across. Just get people to relax, get the body language, critically important.
What's the study called for Google for that?
Just do body language.
Body language.
And in terms of content, I'm going to now tee up Dougal, who I think is the next person. Content is just basically king now on the internet. You know, if you're talking about mental ages of or reading ages of 8 or 9 or whatever, what we want is we want video and we want to be engaged. And I think it's fantastic that's how to tell a story. And if you are putting up content, make sure that not only do you get your people relaxed, but make sure that there's a narrative, make sure that people stay with it and that you're actually saying something interesting. And why is content important? I was talking to a friend of mine recently who works with University of Glasgow, and I was telling him I was going to be talking at this event, and he said, oh, content is just fantastic from his point of view, because he does comms for all the different departments in the University of Glasgow. University of Glasgow, really good. They've got more than 100,000 followers on Facebook, 65,000 I think on Twitter, which is good. He tells me, and I have to take his word for it, they have more engagement on Facebook and Twitter than the University of Stanford. So they're batting at a pretty high level, these guys. And the professor of archaeology came to him recently and said he'd like some publicity, preferably in the Herald, for a conference they were holding about archaeology. And Peter knew, you know, archaeology conference. This is going to get at most 3 sentences in the Herald. 40,000 readers. Probably they'll skip the paragraph on archaeology on the right-hand column. So they were trying to think, how can we help this guy? How do we publicise it? So what they did was they went to the Hunterian Museum. They found something that related to the conference, which was a carnyx. So if you want to Google that, it's CARNYX, which is an Iron Age horn. And they've got the carnyx out. They got the professor of archaeology to play the carnyx, and it's a really interesting noise. And so he did that, and then he explained what the carnyx was, what its relevance was to this archaeology conference. Really good. And they put it out on social media. Number of hits? 2 million. And with links back to the conference. Now, did that mean that there was 2 million people signing up to go to the conference? No, but it meant that the engagement and the news about the conference went much wider than they would have had they used conventional media. And I did the maths, and at 40,000 readers, the Herald would have had to carry this 50 days to reach 2 million readers. So just think about it, you know, and so that was, and what they did, and if you Google that, Carnyx in Glasgow University, and look at it, it's actually quite engaging, but it's not like just brilliant, but it's interesting. And you listen to this professor, and the link is there to a conference which probably, you know, well, most audiences wouldn't go for. Now, in terms of, do any of you have any questions? Because I'm thinking, you know, what am I talking about is relaxation, getting people relaxed in front of camera, is get them talking about subjects they're passionate about, get them to prepare for it, because most of the time when people clam up, they haven't thought through what they're going to say, and get them to, just if they can, just practice summing up what are they saying. You know, we don't want long answers, we don't want long clips, we want really succinct, interesting, punchy language, and get them to try and up their performance. So that's my advice. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. If you get people too relaxed, or if you get them relaxed, is there any danger that you might lose some of the spontaneity or dynamism of their response?
I don't think so, because, you know, they'd have to be horizontal. You know, I think people are much better. You know, there's this thing of, I do quite a lot of training for appearing in front of cameras and also for public speaking. And people say to me, I don't really get nervous when I go on a stage. And I say, I'm thinking, right, you're on the psychotic range then. Because, you know, nerves are a natural thing, and standing in front of an audience, most people get a wee tingle of something. So therefore, you know, if they've got a camera there and they're aware of it, they will be. And I think it makes you, if you don't have a bit of nerves, you focus that, and that's why you put that focus into the performance. Something else I'm just thinking of in terms of other advice, people who get really nervous, just get them to breathe deeply. Because the reason that your nerves get worse is because your nerve is shallow breathing starting, and this kind of crazy monkey in your head goes, and you just suddenly you're into a full life crisis before the camera. But actually breathe deeply, and it just chills you out and relaxes you. It helps to anyway. But you don't want to be totally horizontal, you're right, because otherwise you're not going to perform. You need to be kind of trying to it's about performance and trying to encourage people to perform.
Sometimes, when you see someone who's energetic on stage, they can be quite engaging.
Yeah. Mick Jagger was brilliant on stage, pretty energetic,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm giving away my age now.
You're trying to breathe deeply to calm them down, but sometimes some of the
I'm sure he would have been.
can be quite engaging.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have been nervous before he went onto stage, but he got quite good at it.
Got it all out on
Yeah.
stage.
Okay. I think we're going to come back on stage. If you can think of any questions, whether they're sensible or not, I'll try and answer them. Okay, thank you.